Hello, teachers, parents, and educational leaders, and welcome to this episode of Breaking Down the B.E.S.T. Now, during this episode, you will get a peek into the members-only area where I have tons of resources to help you make math fun, make it click, and make it stick. There should be a link somewhere around this video where you can learn more. All right, now that we got that out of the way, let's get to it, and let's break down the standard. Welcome to Breaking Down the B.E.S.T, a video series dedicated to breaking down Florida's best standards for math. So grab something to write with and maybe even a snack. This looks good. And don't forget to put a smile on your face. There you go, I see you. And let's dive into today's best standard. Hey everyone, my name is Sarah McCarthy and I'm so excited that you are joining me today as we break down the following standard. Today's standard is MA.3.GR.2.1, and this standard says to explore area as an attribute of a two-dimensional figure by covering the figure with unit squares without gaps or overlaps. And I made a little arrow right there to show that that was pretty much the definition. The area is showing the amount of space that a figure covers, like the inside area of a figure, whereas the perimeter is the distance around a figure. We will also find areas of rectangles by counting unit squares. That is basically the focus of this standard, is to find the area by counting the squares. And I wrote here that this is slightly different than CC, or the Common Core standards, because in the Common Core standards, this particular version where we're counting the squares was not limited to rectangles. But in this standard, in the B.E.S.T standards, they are. And also that a two-dimensional figure is a flat plane shape. So you can make that note if you'd like to. By the way, this document that I'm marking up all over is not something that I created. This is something that the Florida Department of Education releases to the public. And in these Breaking Down the B.E.S.T episodes, I'm just showing you how I walk through the standards myself in order to create the resources that are specifically aligned to the B.E.S.T standards, and you're taking on the B.E.S.T membership, which I'll show you what you have access to in just a bit, okay? Let's go to the clarifications though, because those are important. If there is not a unit present, like centimeters or inches, if they're not showing you the specific unit that we're using, we'll just refer to that as a unit square with a length of 1 unit. What else? In our two-dimensional figures cannot exceed 12 by 12 units, meaning that 12 times 12 is the max that we can go to keep it appropriate with our third grade standards, and to include the appropriate units in word form like square centimeter or square centimeter, abbreviated just like that. Using centimeters squared like this is for older grades, so we're not going to really bring that up right now. We want to really focus on the words square centimeter, or SQ for square, and CM for centimeter. All right, so what benchmarks connect with this one in third grade? Well, there's 3.NSO.2.2, which is understanding multiplication and division. And of course, multiplication is huge for finding the area. And really the goal is just to explore area in this standard, but it would be awesome for us to guide our students to make those connections of, oh my gosh, this right here is a rectangular array. Instead of counting all the squares, why don't we just multiply? That's where we want to lead them with this particular standard, okay? But we're not mentioning a formula in this standard just yet. That's not the target of this standard. Bring it up if your students notice it and discover it, but the target of the standard is to count up the squares. And of course, we will need to know this term right there. A rectangular array is an array in the form of a rectangle, just like this down here. This would be 2 rows of 5 for a total of 10 square units as the area or the space inside of a figure. Where are they coming from in second grade, with their vertical alignments? Well, 2.AR.3.2, students use repeated addition with rectangular arrays. So they do have some experience with using repeated addition with arrays that they should be able to implement this year. Also in second grade, they explored perimeter, so that should not be a new concept. In fourth grade, There are some area and perimeter standards that are a little bit more complex than the 3rd grade standards. So this is a great foundation for moving into 4th grade because it does get a little more complicated there. Okay, what else? Now this is the purpose and instructional strategies section. I'm just going to point out what popped out at me. So it says here that students need to understand area measurement. That's the foundation of this. We're building on their knowledge of measurement and multiplicative reasoning, showing that area is a 2-dimensional measurement, unlike perimeter, which is a 1-dimensional. Therefore, it's measured in units that are also 2-dimensional, such as square units. It says here, area is calculated using square units that cover a shape without gaps or overlaps. That's huge for this. It says the expectation of this benchmark is for students to calculate the area of rectangles by counting the unit squares. Again, we are not focusing on the formula in the standard, but if they discover it, if they make that realization and that aha, that is awesome, and go with that. If they are creating the formula, that is so much more powerful than being told the formula. So our goal is to get them to make that connection themselves. Here it says instruction allows for students to draw conclusions about connections to arrays. I put yes, and the multiplication formula in the next standard. So our question should be leading them to use this formula. So we should be thinking, how can I guide them to make this connection? That is our whole goal as teachers, okay? Well, what are some common misconceptions? You might be thinking, how are they going to really make a mistake when it comes to counting up squares? But I will tell you in the past that I have made mistakes as a teacher when it comes to counting up squares and just counting too fast. And so students may miscount unit squares, and a great way to prevent that is to mark it inside the unit when they're counting. For instance, if you have squares looking like this, have them count 1, 2, 3, and so on. Students might be confused why it's called square units, and to keep on making that connection, relating area measurement to counting the squares. And in the videos, you'll hear me say area squarea. Remember that we have to include square units, square centimeters, square feet, whatever it is for the unit. We need to include that in our solution. Strategies to support tiered instruction. I definitely recommend taking a look at this. And you can see here, just this would be a great way to make that connection that it is 4 times 9, that we don't necessarily need the unit squares there, and that we could guide them to making that connection that it is area equals length times width. Also using grid paper, I just said that that is a great idea to incorporate that, but definitely take a look at that if you need to. Notice here that we are missing the square units if we were to continue tiling. This is inside of taking on the B.E.S.T. I'll show you where students must finish the tiling. They're given the number of rows, they're given the number of columns, and if they were to continue making the rows and the columns, they would be able to discover what the area is, even though all of the squares have not been provided there. So there is a video lesson specifically on that in taking on the B.E.S.T, and I'll show you. Here I was just making a note that students might confuse the whole thing with grid paper, but that we're only considering this part right here as for the tiles on the floor. It says, what's the area of the portion that Alex has covered? That would be here. And what is the area of the entire floor, the whole thing? That would be this whole thing right there. And then we have a multi-select here saying that it's 30 square feet. So which ones, looks like it's a multi-select question. So which of the following have 30 square units or 30 square feet when you're counting them up? So that's a great description there. Okay, this is what the standard looks like. So you have your video lessons. This one is about finding area by finishing the tiling. So 2 video lessons here to go over each element. And you can see for this one, we have the squares missing and they have to complete the tiling. So we go through that. Then if you have the silver plan, you just click here. You can go back to your bronze resources at any time with the silver, and you have access to more printables, answer keys, and this math misconception mystery episode. So click on printables. Then this will come up. So you can see here, this is the bronze video lesson printout. And then you have extra practice afterwards. So after your students watch it, you can make sure that they've got it down with extra practice after they've taken down their notes from the video lesson. Extra practice 2 with tiling. This is a math mission. Right here it says Janet wants to add new tile to part of her living room. Each child has side lengths of 1 square foot. Her design is below with the shaded area representing where she wants to add the new tiles. What's the area of the entire living room in feet? What is the area of the space where Janet wants to add new tile in square feet? And then we've got part 2. So it's kind of taking everything together, the tiling, understanding of what area is, and throwing it into a more complex real-world problem for students. It's a math task. Then you have your math misconception mystery problem for the day. All you've got to do is just click play and I will walk you through the entire process. So first, your students will be advised that they can complete this problem on their own. And then they will watch as 4 characters solve the same problem, 3 of them making a mistake and 1 of them solving it correctly. And yes, those characters are just me dressed up in silly costumes with silly accents. They're a lot of fun. So it's great for math discourse and really listening in for error analysis. Then students will complete this detective report on the next page explaining who the most reasonable answer belongs to and why, and evaluating the work of the other 3. So if you have the silver plan, that's what you have access to, and you have your answer keys right there. If you have the gold plan, just click here, and you can go back to your bronze video lessons, your silver resources with the extra practice, the math task, math misconception mystery, and you also have the gold, which gives you access to a mini assessment, this breaking down the best video ad-free and right with everything else, and access to McCarthy Math 155. So let's click on the mini assessment to see what it looks like. These mini assessments contain about 4 to 5 questions with a variety of question types. You can see right here, okay? The standard's right at the top for you, so you know that it's the right one. The answer key is right here. Again, you have access to these breaking down the best videos where we're breaking down the standard and connecting what you have access to in your membership. Now, these videos are also available on YouTube, so you might be watching from YouTube and exploring what the membership looks like, and that's fine too. But just know it's a little perk of being right there. The main reason that you have selected the gold membership, if you have, is because of McCarthy Math 155, which is a daily math intervention aligned to the Common Core standards. Now, I know it says Common Core standards. That's why I've created Taking on the Best to be specifically aligned to the BEST standards, but I had so many teachers and schools and educational leaders asking me to include McCarthy Math 155 because there are a lot of skills that do trickle over, and I'll show you what I mean. The 155, by the way, stands for 155 video lessons for each grade. So if we click on 3rd grade, and you scroll down to right here, perimeter and area, there are 16 additional video lessons for perimeter, area, and finding the side lengths. So first is understanding perimeter. Okay, so scrolling down here, see how it says finding area by counting up the squares? And notice before when we were comparing, we said the Common Core standards looked a little bit different because they weren't really in the shape of rectangles. Now these are composite figures, which we do get into in 3rd grade, and it's still great practice for them, but just know that the target with the BEST standards are rectangular arrays. So you can definitely practice that. There's finding the area here, which we'll get into in the other standards. Finding the area specifically of squares, where you're only given 1 side length because squares have equal sides, and so on. So you can see that with the gold membership, you have access to tons of material. All right, I think that's it for everything for this particular standard. So I hope that this was helpful in understanding the standard and then seeing what you have access to with your membership. Before we go, let me remind you that what you choose to do with your life, it really does matter. Thank you so much for showing up every single day for your students, for showcasing what your best looks like in order to inspire your students to take on the best version of themselves. So thank you for all that you do. I know you're busy, so I will see you next time, all right? Bye. Okay, so I know that I just said goodbye for now, but I'm gonna ask you to do one more thing, okay? If you enjoyed this episode, please consider sharing it with your teacher friends or other leaders in education. That's how I get to continue doing what I love to do, which of course is supporting you all to the best of my ability. All right, for real now. Bye.